Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Ian Hill, one of the channel business managers here at Vuzion. I'd like to welcome you all to the Introducing Microsoft 365 webinar. As it's lunchtime and people are probably running around getting sandwiches and coffees, we'll just give it 2 minutes for everybody to get on board, then we'll start the webinar. A bit of housekeeping. We are running a Q&A session alongside this, so if anybody has any questions, then just fill them into the Q&A section and we will answer them at the end. So we'll just go on mute for a couple of minutes to give everybody a chance to catch up, and we'll be starting around about 3 minutes past. Okay, so we're ready to go. We've got 2 speakers apart from me topping and tailing. We've got Chris Hall, one of our solutions consultants, and we've got Oliver Moesi, one of our solutions architects. So Chris is going to go over the product and solution in some detail, what it can do, what it can't, what the limitations are, and what opportunities it opens up. And Oliver will delve into the licensing aspect of Microsoft 365. So I'm now going to hand you over to Chris, and please remember, any questions, just type them into the Q&A and we will answer at the end. Here you go, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Thank you all for coming to the webinar today. This is Introducing Microsoft 365. As Ian's explained, he's given you a brief outline of what myself and what Oliver will be speaking about today. So we'll get straight into it. So Microsoft 365 was recently broadcast, as it were, at Microsoft's Inspire event, one for all its partners, where it shows all of its developments, its new services, and where its directions will be over the coming year. And Microsoft 365 will be a big part of that, and it is one of the biggest opportunities for the next few years going forward for all of your clients with Office 365 or who have not bought it yet. But we wanted, Oliver and I, to put forward a bit of context around this and where it comes from, and why Microsoft have made this front and center of its offers. So over the next course of a couple of slides, hopefully I will be able to explain that. So some of the challenges that IT administrators and clients, partners, even users have today is that we have and are facing a more complex environment. So what we mean by that is that users, they expect to be able to work in any location. They have different types of devices, whether those devices are Wintel devices or Apple devices or Android devices. There are many, many different kinds of applications, both local and both hosted in the cloud. And there is data across all of those devices and applications, and held by different users within organizations. And as you can see, is that this is not something really that's simplified over the last 10 years. This is something that's becoming an increasingly complex landscape with which to be able to manage, be able to not necessarily to control, although that's a big part of it, but to protect users from the threats which are coming on the market at this moment in time. So it's not just this idea of we're in a more complex environment and a more complex market, but there's also changes to both users and workers' behaviour. Statistics have shown that there is a greater expectation amongst workers to be able to work from a mobile position, whether that is on the go, whether that's from home, to accommodate a more flexible working and lifestyle. There's the expectation that they will be able to use different of those devices to be able to do work. I mean, gone are the days where you would come into a single office, you would sit down and use one desktop PC to log on. They expect to have mobile working and those applications to fit on those devices, whether they're, again, as said, in train stations or in cafes or holding business meetings off site, or if they have to work to many things in the office. There is also a culture where the workforce is generally getting younger, that they will be able to use more technology, but also as well is that there is a culture that the IT will be flexible around them, as opposed to them having to almost come in line with the technology that's used. So not only do we have this picture of complexity, but we have this picture of almost changing expectations, both amongst users and workers, and of the organisations who want to take their IT services from you. And also as well, is, as we can see on the right hand side here, is that we're not only talking about complexity and the changing expectations and constitution of workers, but also as well the threat landscape. And this is quite important to kind of put into context, is that because you have flexible working, so that's not all working in one place or according to one device, having to support them, to manage them. The attack and vector is becoming exponentially bigger. As an IT admin, you have to protect your users across all devices, across all applications that fit onto those devices, wherever it is that they work, in the office, at home, on the go. Because you have to protect not only the data, but you also have to protect your intellectual property within your organization as well. And some of the statistics that Microsoft have put out here really do give pause for thought. When you do have an attack within a network, the average business takes over 200 days to be find out that attack is taking place. That 75%, over that now, of those intrusions are due to compromised user credentials. That can be, across multiple devices, people losing their devices, or they're connecting up devices that, they brought them along. They could already be jailbroken before they actually attach to your services. Microsoft estimate all of these attacks to cost over, 500 billion to the dollars to the global economy. And also as well, the average cost of a data breach to a company is $3.5 million. I mean, that is a terrific amount for something that can occur, on any given day. And these attacks are not just ones that are expected. These are, very sophisticated attacks that are meant to be 0-day. They're meant to come out of the blue, non-expected through any one of those applications. So when we talk about what Microsoft talks about, is the modern workplace, we're doing so against this idea of increased complexity of a changing workforce and of an increased attack vectors, but also as well that the modern workplace in itself is changing. So we're finding that, and Microsoft and other major providers are finding, what is now that modern workplace is that its workers generally tend to be coming away from doing routine tasks every day to be involved in more creative and critical thinking, which requires a kind of wealth of apps, maybe executed across different devices to do that. We're seeing a move from individual siloed productivity, so that things are done and weighed upon single points of failure, to things being achieved through teamwork, which again involves the changes in the applications and across devices to be able to do that. But at the same time, as we're seeing all of these changes and this increased complexity, what this modern workplace is to take all of these different applications and these different devices and to try and streamline them into an integrated solution. And as we've also discussed, is that in the modern workplace, we're moving beyond those individual threats. 10 years ago, we were talking very much about worms and Trojans coming through the email, to talking about sophisticated organizational breaches through ransomware, through whaling, through trying to get onto the local machine in order to cause network breaches. And this modern workplace is part of the basis for which digital transformation tries to address the complexity, the changing workforce, the threats to the workplace. So what this whole digital transformation by Microsoft is to empower those employees, engage those customers, is to optimize the organization's operations so that they can do things a lot quicker in a lot more creative fashion, and also to transform those products. And so addressing the issues of the modern workplace through digital transformation is where we come then to introduce Microsoft 365. Because if we were to define Microsoft 365, it is, as Microsoft have defined it, a complete, intelligent, secure solution to empower employees in order to be able to do that work. Now, when we look at Microsoft 365, what Microsoft are doing is bringing together Office 365, Windows 10, whether Windows 10 might be Pro or Enterprise, and the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite. And they're bringing these three major applications together, so not only to bring them together into a bundle, so to speak, but also it's about the interrelationship between those applications in order to be able to address the complexity, in order to streamline it and make it easier for users and empower them to be more productive. It's about providing them with the latest applications, of which they're a younger generation of workers are used to, and to be able to support all those applications all on these different devices. So if it doesn't matter about whether users have mobile applications like iPads or Windows mobiles, or whether they have Android phones, that they can actually perform these tasks on whatever devices that it is that they can connect to the system. But also, by leveraging these three applications, they can protect each other through all of the heightened functionality of working together. So when we describe Microsoft 365, we talk about providing an environment for workers to be creative and to produce more. We talk about a bundle where is going to encourage teamwork through applications such as Microsoft Teams or SharePoint or OneDrive, by all having access to a local set of applications which are standardized across users. We're talking about the simplicity in order of managing it through one pane of glass. And we're also talking about the security, which the Enterprise Mobility Suite can roll out compliance and configuration. So that is the kind of background and the point of Microsoft 365. And it's important to note that if I just cycle back to these three major things, Office 365, Windows 10, and the Enterprise Mobility and Security, Microsoft 365 is a culmination of these things and how they work together. The individual things have been available for some time, but using them all together creates, should we say, the most productive and the most secure way for workers. And it's at this point what I will do now is, so we can have a look at each individual SKUs of 365, Microsoft 365. I will just bring in now Oliver to go over these for you.
Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Oliver Moses, as Ian stated, and I'm one of the technical architects at Vuzion. So there's three Microsoft 365 SKUs. There's Microsoft 365 Business, Microsoft 365 E3, and Microsoft 365 E5. And obviously they cater to all kinds of scenarios and have higher cost offerings. So you can basically understand your customers' requirements and provide the SKU, the Microsoft 365 SKU, that's relevant to the opportunities you have with your customers. So as Chris eloquently said, Microsoft 365 is a combination of three distinct SKUs. You have Office 365, which you should all be well aware of by now. You have Windows 10, and that's aligned to Windows 10 Creators Edition. And then you have Enterprise Mobility plus Security, which is a combination of security and protectionist measures for data and tenants services in Office 365. So let me talk about Microsoft 365 Business, which is the lower end of the SKU offering. So the Office 365 element is aligned to Office 365 Business Premium. So workers will get Teams, they get Exchange Online, so they will have their email and calendar functionality and can access their email through Outlook or OA. They can make VoIP or voice calls and do video conferencing and meetings in Skype for Business. And then they get Office Business, so the Office 2016 Business Suite, so that can be deployed to their Windows 10 devices, Mac devices, or they can install Office onto their tablets and mobile phones, sign in with their Office 365 identity, and actually be able to edit content rather than just use those apps to view. With Enterprise Mobility and Security, they get access to Microsoft Intune. So Microsoft Intune allows the customer to enroll those Windows 10 devices. They can also enroll Windows 7 and Windows 8/8.1 devices. They can enroll Android devices, whether that's mobile phones or tablets, iOS devices, so iPhones and iPads, and they can also enroll Windows mobile devices if they so wish to. So with Intune, what you can do is you can create a level of configuration and conditional access policies that basically states what those devices have to be configured like to access Office 365 services. So from a simple standpoint, you may create a configuration policy that states any mobile phone, so that could be Android, iOS and Windows, must adhere to have a PIN policy. Now that's something you've historically been able to do with just out of the box Exchange ActiveSync, but Intune goes one further. So you can actually choose to enforce encryption on those devices. So for example, if a user has a personal device and it's not encrypted, that device must go through an encryption process prior to getting access to corporate email, as well as, for example, enforcing a PIN policy. You may also wish to seek if any of your users has decided to root their Android devices, or, for example, jailbreak their Apple devices, which would have certain security issues in the business. For example, if you have corporate email on a compromised device, the user might not realize they've compromised their device in that way. But there may be a level of security now where some malware could get on that phone because the security barrier has been broken, and an unknown attacker could get access to corporate email. And you can also create Windows application policies, so you can push out applications to Windows 10 devices or mobile devices or tablets. So you could push out Office, for example, to those Windows 10 devices, and you could push out the Office apps, the Skype for Business app, or even third-party applications that you need your customers to have, or they've requested through the MAN policy that you should wish to create. And then with Microsoft 365 Business, you also get the Windows 10 Professional. So this is a professional SKU. It provides endpoint security and Windows Defender. Both of those can be controlled via Microsoft Intune, so you can create a level of autonomous policy settings to push default policies across all devices. And of course, if you have customers that have Windows 7, Windows 8, or Windows 8.1, Microsoft 365 Business gives them access to Windows 10 Professional on those devices. And you can actually go through an in-place upgrade process for those devices. So what that does is it moves the traditional operating system or OS purchasing of Windows and actually streamlines it to an OPEX model. So it kind of brings it in line with how the customer is purchasing Office 365. And it also provides the same level of operating system across all devices. So when you're creating modern workplaces or modern meetings or pushing applications or endpoint configuration, you don't have to worry with the complexities of multiple Windows operating systems, and you can provide a unified kind of productivity experience to end users. If we take a look at Microsoft 365 E3, we can see that we now get Office 365 services aligned to the E3 SKU. So again, we get Teams, we get Exchange Online, we get voice, video, and meetings with Skype for Business. We now get Office Pro Plus rather than Office Business. We still get SharePoint and OneDrive access, but we also get access now to services like Analytics and Delve. So in an enterprise environment, team managers may want to be looking at how not only how they work, but possibly how the business units work. For example, teams that are under their control. And then you get enterprise features in Exchange. So for example, we could start creating data loss prevention policies. So a customer, for example, that needs to report on PCI non-compliance would need something like data loss prevention in Office 365 to be able to configure that and protect themselves and pass any auditable trail that states that they need to be have a green tick against PCI compliance. With enterprise mobility and security, you now get additional features. So not only do we have all the features that I've talked about with Microsoft Intune, but they get upgraded to a premium version of Azure Active Directory. So they now get Azure Active Directory Premium P1. So what that means is they can now start planning multi-factor authentication scenarios. So they could have a scenario where they wanted to enforce multi-factor authentication for users. They may want to create quite open policies. So for example, if they're in office buildings, just the username and password suffices for access to their Office 365 services. But if they're working from another location, whether that's anywhere on the internet, from their home, you want to enforce multi-factor authentication. And that brings their phone into play. So they can receive a phone call, a text message, or they can actually use the Microsoft Authenticator app on their phone to provide that second level of authentication. And that protects the data and your workload and your corporate email and documentation that you have in Office 365. Because if anyone has their username and password compromised, an attacker now can't get in just with that username and password. They now need to also have that device or receive that phone call to be able to get in and take data. You also get information protection. So you get Azure Information Protection Premium P1. So this is a rights management service. So you can protect your documents. So you can start marking documents as confidential, which means that only users within the business are allowed to open them and view them. You can create read-only policies. You can create do not forward policies. You can set policies like this document's not allowed to be printed. You can set expiry on the policy. So for example, if you want to share a document with someone, whether that's an external user or an internal employee, and then you give access to that user for a week, you can grant access and set an expiration policy on that document. You can also create groups. So for example, if some of your customers had a board level report, you can create a rights management policy that specifies only executive members of the business are able to open these documents. And this is all backed up with intelligent reporting. So you can actually go to a dashboard, the Azure RMS dashboard, and actually see where these documents are being opened. And then you also get Microsoft Advanced Threat Analytics. So whilst Microsoft 365 is designed to support customers that don't necessarily have an on-premises Active Directory, we do understand that some organizations still do, and not everyone can move all services to the cloud. So Microsoft Advanced Threat Analytics allows the customer to deploy an on-premises agent to their domain controllers, or you can also do network port mirroring. And not only can you then look at the data and the dashboards of your security reporting in Office 365 to see how users are accessing Office 365 services, but it now takes all of that data from the on-premises environment and presents it in the Security and Compliance Center reporting section in Office 365. So you get a unified view for both on-premises and Office 365 security. And then the Windows 10 SKU is upgraded to the enterprise version of Windows 10. So we can now start putting into play solutions like Credential Guard or Device Guard. That uses advanced virtualization technology to protect credentials that are on that device, for example, a username and password, from malware. You can also do features like Azure AD Join to actually join the Windows 10 devices to Azure Active Directory. So you could have a device, a Windows 10 device that's joined to an on-premises Active Directory, and you could also actually join it to the Active Directory instance in Azure for that Office 365 tenant. And there's more productivity. Chris mentioned younger generation workforce and having a newer age version of apps. So you get Windows Ink and Cortana at work. And then literally the Microsoft 365 E5 SKU adds certain features to that E3 base offering I've mentioned. So you now get PSTN conferencing with Skype for Business. So you can have you can allow users to dial in to conferences, and they also get Cloud PBX. From an analytics perspective, those users now get access to Power BI Pro and Delve Analytics. From a security and compliance perspective, Exchange Online Protection, which is the antivirus and anti-malware solution for Exchange Online, is now upgraded to Advanced Threat Protection. So that provides safe links solutions. So any links that get sent to users are actually scanned in real time to make sure that those links don't forward to a place where malware is present, and that is present with every click. So even if you click on an email that's a month old, it will test that link and make sure it's safe. And it also presents 0-day malware. So if there is an attachment that has no signature to say it has a virus within it, that attachment will go to a sandbox environment. Windows servers and Windows operating systems will be spun up, and that attachment will be detonated within that environment. And then Microsoft will look at those servers and those computers to see if anything then happens to the registry, if those computers then start trying to talk to a third party IP, and also if anything else happens to those devices. From an enterprise mobility and security standpoint, your Active Directory Premium feature gets updated to B2. So that basically provides Azure identity protection. So what you can do now is not only can you look at those reports that provide security standpoints from what your users are doing. For example, you have an employee called John, and previously with Azure Active Directory Premium P1, it would report to say John has logged in London, England, for example, and then 10 minutes later, he's logged in from China. So that report now becomes something that you can turn into a workflow. So you can start to create workflows to say that if a user does log into 2 locations that aren't possible to support, for example, an anti-teleporting rule, you know, that user can't fly to China within 10 minutes and log in, you can create a workflow that will basically log that user out of the service, send an email to an administrator to alert them of a potential breach, so that team or that administrator can then review that situation before providing access back to John. And then Windows 10 Enterprise E5, you can also get advanced endpoint security. So you start to get Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection above the standard Windows Defender service. So I hope that's given you some insight into the Microsoft 365 packages, and I'm going to pass you back over to Chris. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Oliver. I think that gives a really depth and grand view of the 3 SKUs available. I mean, each one of the applications within that are really valuable in terms of cutting down the attack vector, increasing the productivity, in terms of making it easier to manage for IT administrators. So every one of these has been, I think, really thought out by Microsoft and gives real value. And that's why we're now going to move on to the benefits and opportunities of Microsoft 365. Of course, you can go about it as Oliver has just gone over and really deconstruct those SKUs and talk about the benefits on an application basis. However, you can also talk about the benefits from a holistic point of view, and some of those benefits we have put together on this slide for you. So Microsoft 365 in itself, if we're looking for headline benefits, we're looking about better connecting the employees, customers and suppliers. We're talking about protecting company data across devices, and that security is always on. About the broadest and deepest set of apps and services with a universal toolkit, with the ability for administrators within those IT firms to control every aspect of those applications, but then also control other cloud applications outside of Office 365. So, for example, through Azure AD Premium and controlling access to the other app landscape that they have that using within their organization. We're talking about empowering employees to get work done from anywhere on any device, which is a very important part of Microsoft 365, but it's also protecting employees when doing work from anywhere on any device. That's the important thing. By working in a mobile environment, you're not compromising their security. By them working at home on their local machine, you're not compromising their security in order to be able to do that. we're always looking to contain the data, contain their IP, and work to the upcoming GDPR standards. We're talking about the single point of management, the single pane of glass with which to manage it, to work through the Office 365 control panel, as I'm sure you're all aware, but also the Azure panel on the back of that. And Microsoft has made huge attempts to try and get this into a single pane of glass. So if any of you have used Intune before, that's now been integrated into Azure alongside Azure Active Directory too. So, you know, one ecosystem, one point of management, which is going to be a great thing for your clients, IT administrators. And it really is in these last, I mean, I think that, you know, two of the major benefits are in these last 2 points here. Is about simplifying the IT. If we cycle all the way back to the first slide where we talk about complexity, it's about cutting through that complexity and making things simple for users. And it's about helping, not controlling workers. It's more about enabling them to be most productive, and security and productivity then become one and the same things. So it's about taking all of these benefits when you're talking to your clients, and they're also about breaking down those SKUs and seeing the benefits of each of those applications and translating each one of those applications into solutions that can make a real difference in terms of clients adopting this solution. But also as well, and we thought we would also add a point about GDPR. So GDPR, which is coming in next year, is an increasing thing for business. Microsoft 365, like all of the other Microsoft applications, are built for GDPR compliance. Now, it's important to point out that we're not saying that Microsoft 365 in itself is going to completely solve GDPR, because this is much about business process throughout a user's organization, as it is the tools that you use. But certainly if you refer back to the Microsoft Trust Center, you will see how the Enterprise Mobility Suite, how Office 365, how Windows 10, how Azure Information Protection, and all these other applications within the Microsoft 365 SKUs are all designed to adhere to GDPR standards. And we're going to find that's going to be a massive selling point about this solution. So having discussed and broken down the SKUs, having looked at, you know, some of the holistic benefits of Microsoft 365, we come to then talk about the massive opportunity for yourselves as partners of Vuzion to take this to your clients. And we roughly see the opportunities come in through the SKUs. So as you can see here, as Oliver discussed, Microsoft 365 Business is really targeted towards the small and medium enterprises, organizations that are under 300 users, ones that may have a limited budget. They may aspire to go to an enterprise SKU at a later date, but might, you know, not have the budget to do it within, you know, the financial year, or could be an organization running on a limited budget. They'll tend to be organizations that will have no overall IT manager or no IT department to be able to support users, or organizations just looking for real foundational simple needs. That business SKU has Windows 10 Pro. It offers, you know, Intune, and it offers Office 365 Premium, which are all, you know, market leading products, which will give you a very solid foundation in terms of both your security and your business productivity applications. Whereas Microsoft 365 Enterprise is probably more towards organizations who are over 300 users. They're organizations with advanced requirements, such as they need to do advanced e-discovery, or they want a PSTN voice solution if coming off a cloud PBX. Or they're organizations that need very specific functionality, which is embedded within that SKUs. And the examples we have here is that They may want to use Excel services in SharePoint, which is only available in a SharePoint Plan 2, which is only available in an enterprise SKU. But the opportunity there is, things that, regardless of whether they want business or whether they want enterprise, there are common, shall we say, opportunities for any organisation, whether they already have Office 365 or not. And these things are as follows. So one of the things is that there is a very good opportunity for Microsoft 365 if the organisation doesn't have a local Active Directory at this moment in time. Part of Microsoft 365 is connecting them to Azure AD in order to leverage the Windows 10 and the Enterprise Mobility Suite functionality together. It's an important part of the process. So if they haven't got local AD, then this makes them right, rather than going to Office 365, than going straight to Microsoft 365. The other thing is that if they are looking to get rid of their on-premise footprint, I mean, Oliver and I have heard for years of organisations saying to us, we want to go all in with the cloud. We want to manage things completely from the cloud. We don't want any servers on site. We don't want any overhead at all. Microsoft 365 is the first, I think, bundle that gives organisations the ability to do that. Now, it will also unearth other opportunities, if they have other servers on site, to translate them into the cloud too. So the movement to Microsoft 365, whether it's from Office 365 or whether they're outside the 365 ecosystem completely, can bring up huge opportunities in terms of transitional costs. So now, having had a look at the massive opportunity before us, all of the benefits, we did also want to introduce, because Oliver and I have been working in doing the deployment for Microsoft 365 already, for both the business and the enterprise variant, and we want to give you the assurance that this is not just us trying to sell you licensing. We're actively involved in this every single day, and we're actively involved in migrations to Microsoft 365 now, and we have already completed several of them. One of our partners that we're working with has provided this case study, which just goes over why an organisation wanted Microsoft 365, what we did for them, and what solutions that it actually gave them. So we're actually doing this in reality and can support you as our partners in doing this. So this organisation, who was roughly around about, I would say, I think it was about 40 users. They had several versions of Windows across their organisation. So it was really difficult for them to support their OS across the organisation, support the apps that they wanted on their machines. They had no application policies or no security policies for them to manage those apps or manage those devices. They didn't even know, for example, about whether users were forcing pins on their mobile device, or as Oliver referred to earlier, they didn't know whether their devices were jailbroken, that if somebody had bought a mobile through an informal contact or in a second-hand shop or something, they just didn't know whether that was a safe device to connect to their corporate systems. But they also they had a very strong conviction that, as I mentioned previously, that they wanted to go all cloud. They had a local Active Directory, but they didn't have any applications connecting to it or any file servers. They just had the local Active Directory in itself. So they were sure that they wanted to go in all cloud and remove that local Active Directory. So what we did is we upgraded them to Windows 10 Creators Edition. We connected all of their users to Azure Active Directory. We rolled out or layered Intune over the top and connected that up to their Windows 10 and mobile devices. And then we enforced both device compliance and configuration policies. An example of that compliance policy would be to check that those machines had BitLocker enabled, which made sure that all of their local devices were encrypted. And the outcome for that, that we got a quote back in terms of what it was we achieved. We not achieved not only this case study that we compared to, but we got a quotation of the IT manager that says here it's given the company a clear roadmap and for migrating for their whole migration to the cloud, and that Microsoft 365 has enabled them with powerful tools that can be deployed rapidly without compromising compliance or security. So where does this now leave us in terms of, we've taken a look about how Microsoft 365 came to be. Oliver went over the SKUs. We looked at the holistic benefits of Microsoft 365. We looked at which SKU, the opportunity for which SKU, for which opportunity for Microsoft 365. And we've also had a quick look at a case where we ourselves have deployed it out successfully already and can support our partners. But what about the partner opportunity? You know, if you're a partner of Vuzion, it's quite natural to ask yourself, you know, where do I, you know, how am I going to benefit from this opportunity? Well, we would basically say that there are two major ways. The first is that you can develop your own service wrap and your own managed services around Microsoft 365. So not only sell the 365 licensing, but you may have gateways in which you resell, or you may have, you know, managed services that you can do on site in terms of managing. This goes way beyond kind of managing just email or managing just the Office suite. This goes right down into managing identity, managing security, managing all of the devices for the organization. So you can now really pop up and add to your own service wrap. Or you can leverage Vusion's. So Vuzion has a service wrap which includes things like Mimecast and Symantec and Global Relay, and many other things besides. But it also as well can provide either professional or managed services. If you're looking for us to help you to help your client migrate on Microsoft 365, if you're looking for us to consult, do a discovery, to work in a joint venture with you, then we can do that as well. But by all means, if you do have the capacity, you know, you may be looking at transition from leveraging from us to developing your own over time. And there's just a few statistics on the side from Microsoft, you know. By doing this, by moving beyond just Microsoft 365 and adding your own or bringing our stuff in with it, you can make significantly more revenue and significantly more margin. So the next steps really for partners, should you be interested, you know, concerning Microsoft 365, for doing more, you know, if you have an opportunity or you would like to talk more about it, or would like us to kind of maybe even look to do a demonstration of it, then is to speak to a member of our Vuzion team. So you can contact them at partners@vuzion.cloud, or you can call the number on the screen. So in the next 10 minutes, hopefully we can have a few questions that have come up during the presentation today, and that Oliver and I can address them for you.
Thank you, Chris. This is Ian again. So I'd like to thank everybody for listening through the presentation. Just a couple of side points. GDPR was mentioned, well, extensively talked about during this presentation. Just to remind you all that we do have a GDPR Love Cloud event at the 2nd of November at Microsoft in Paddington. Details and registration links are on the Vuzion website, so I'd encourage you to come along to that. And now we just have a couple of questions which I want to pass over to the team now, starting with a question from Steve regarding Azure AD. So Oliver?
Okay, so the question from Steve is, will Azure AD support group policy? So in Intune, you can push out various configuration policies that directly affect the local security policy of those devices. Currently in Azure AD, with Azure AD Premium features, there is the concept of group policy, but not as you would traditionally understand it in an on-premises environment. That is changing. So you will be able to, in a cloud-first world where Azure AD is actually the Active Directory for all devices, and there is no on-premises Active Directory left, or it's been decommissioned, or it never was there, you will be able to put group policy into Azure AD. Some of it may be put there wholly, whilst other parts may be managed by Intune.
Excuse me, the next question is from Reese. Is there a specific education SKU and pricing for Microsoft 365? Thanks, Chris. Moving on now, how are partners getting around having to upgrade Windows 7 or 8 machines before going to Microsoft 365? I noticed the case study mentioned Win 10 Creator Edition. Is this a way around it?
So you don't have to access of the Office 365 element of the Microsoft 365 service. You don't have to pre-enroll and upgrade your device to Windows 10. You can do it afterwards. You can hold off that component until you've decided to plan and deploy your Windows 10 solution. But once you're ready to do it, there's a process that Vuzion can share with you that basically starts off an in-place upgrade process for those Windows 7 and 8 and 8.1 devices to take them to Windows 10 Creators Edition. Obviously, features like Azure AD Join are only supported in Windows 10. So if your project plan with your customer needed those devices to be Azure AD joined, then obviously upgrading those devices to Windows 10 would be at the start of the project rather than a later phase.
Thanks, Oliver. Chris, I'd like you to go over the education question again. I hear there was an audio issue.
Yeah, I'm very sorry about that. In terms of the educational SKU, through CSP, there is no mention at the moment of educational SKUs, but what we can do is that we can go back through our account manager and see if those things are forthcoming, and then we can get back to you on the subject.
And we have access to the October price list preview. We'll go through that and answer your question there, Reese. Another question we have, is there a sandbox area where we can create a test environment?
The answer to that at this moment in time is that we will be looking to potentially issue an environment at a later date, so that may be forthcoming. But what another school of thought on that is that maybe because it's about connecting machines to Azure AD, is that we would recommend potentially setting up an account and getting really into the functionality. I mean, there's a lot of it in terms of, let's just take an E3. All the things Oliver went over in the SKU and Office 365 E3, the Windows 10 Enterprise Edition, EMS. So EMS is as including both Intune and Azure ADP1. It normally is a case that you need a little bit of time and engagement with that. So as well as us potentially issuing a sandbox environment in the future, and we'll take that back to have a look at, we would also recommend potentially looking at setting up a Microsoft 365 tenant for yourselves, so that you can kind of engage with it, get to grips with it, and try to do a lot of testing as much as possible to better support your clients.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I think we've come to the end then in that case. So can I once again thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to listen to the webinar. Please get in touch with us at Vuzion if there's anything else you need in terms of helping with opportunities, talking to your customers. Drop a mail into partners@vuzion.cloud or give us a call on 0333 009 5937, or just contact your account manager. If it's me, happy to help. If it's Darren, happy to help, or Alex and Val. You know where we are, so please get in touch. But thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you.